Welcome back. Come along with me on this next project that I'm gonna do. I picked up this really nice solid dresser. It's a Kincaid dresser, a really good size. It's not overly large, so I think it'll work in a lot of people's spaces. Very structurally sound, very heavy. It is missing a piece of trim on the side, so I am going to have to remove the trim that's under the lip of the top of the dresser. I do have some leftover wood from another project that I might use to fill that space, just because it's going to be nearly impossible for me to try to find a similarly shaped piece of trim to replace just that one side piece. But it shouldn't be an issue. I think that should be a pretty easy solve. Now I can start disassembling the things that need to be taken off. Like I said, like this trim board, it's just held on by nails. It's not even glued. So this is coming off pretty easily. It's too bad that I'm missing that piece. It is all solid wood. They're nice quality pieces, but I'll replace it with something else that's solid. I do want to update the legs and base of this dresser. So I am gonna take off the existing legs. I'm gonna leave the bottom trim that goes around the lip because I think that will add some nice dimension. But yeah, usually these are really not held on by much more than a couple screws. This piece is pretty filthy. It's just got a lot of dust, a lot of grime. Who knows the last time it was wiped down, cleaned off. I did pick it up in a thrift store, so you don't know between transport and how long it's been sitting there. A good cleaning is definitely in order. I've let the filler dry overnight, and so now I can go back with some sandpaper and sand off all of the hardware holes that I filled. I'm going to use a 120 grit attached to my vacuum for dust collection, and I'm also going to scuff sand absolutely everything. I'm not trying to take the finish off, I'm just trying to roughen it up a little bit to allow that paint and primer to have a really good surface to stick to. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up a second coat of filler to go over the hardware holes one more time. It almost always takes 2 coats. The first one is just to fill the main voids, and then the second one really smooths everything out. Straining my primer through a mesh strainer to remove any clumps. I'm going to spray the drawer fronts and the entire body of the dresser in a couple coats of primer. I'm gonna see how many it's gonna take. Because this is a cherry stained piece of furniture, a lot of times it can bleed through either the stain, the finish, or the wood underneath. Both can bleed, but this bin shellac primer does a really good job blocking bleed through. The first coat of primer is now dry, and you can see that area that's wanting to bleed through. This is where those wood tannins were coming up. I'm going to do a second coat, and that will help to seal that in permanently. But if I had not primed, this is where it would have bled through the paint. The second coat of primer is now dry, and I'm going to give it a really, really light sand with a high grit sandpaper. This just really makes for a really smooth surface. I'm gonna use Baby Fawn for this dresser. It's a really, really pretty, warm, neutral off-white. It's a Benjamin Moore color. I'm using the Command brand in a satin sheen. And just like every single paint, primer, top coat, it gets strained before it gets put in my sprayer. I will water this down ever so slightly. It just makes for a finer mist that comes out of the spray gun. Put a little bit too much. It's already a pretty loose formula, so I don't have to add a whole lot of water, but just a couple tablespoons goes a long way. Now that everything has been painted, I can start building the base and legs. I'm going to use 2x2 board to cut 4 different legs. The front 2 legs I have decided to put a taper on, so I'm going to use a block of wood to help me create that angle that I need for that taper. And then I will cut each one of those legs to be 6 inches long. I want to add 6 inches is about, I find it to be a pretty good height for the legs. It allows someone to get a vacuum underneath if you wanted to vacuum. There's nothing worse than a piece of furniture that is too low to the ground where dust, pet hair, things can just collect under there and you can't get to it very easily. After the 4 legs have been cut, I can now cut the long base pieces that are going to go in between the 2 front legs, the 2 back legs, and then along the side of the dresser. I measure the total length of the dresser and then subtract whatever inset I would like for either side, as well as 3 inches to account for the 1.5 inch wide leg on either side. And I will cut 2 identical pieces for the length and do the same with the width for each of these boards. Using the Craig pocket hole system, I'm going to put some pocket holes on each side of all 4 boards. That way I can affix the legs to the base, and I will also drill a couple holes along the edge of the top of the base so that I can affix it to the dresser itself. I picked up a fresh can of this special walnut water-based stain by Bear, and I'm going to go ahead and stain this entire base and wipe everything on very liberally and then wipe it all back. I'm gonna work really, really quickly because this stuff dries really fast. But the nice thing with these water-based stains is that they dry really fast and you can top coat them as soon as they dry. And I like to use a water-based top coat so I don't have to wait for it to cure for like 24 hours like I would with an oil-based. I've got my water-based top coat loaded up in my sprayer. So now I'm gonna spray a couple quick coats on this. It won't take long, dries pretty quickly, and then I can get this installed on the base of the dresser and start pulling everything together. It's time to start thinking about hardware, and I am gonna do a combination of knobs and handles. I think the top 3 drawers and then these 4 smaller drawers on either side are gonna have knobs, and then the longer drawers, I have some matching handles to go along with it. For all the spots that I'm gonna put knobs, I am going to put a little piece of tape so that I can mark off where the exact center is for my knobs. These are the knobs that I got. I think that they'll complement the color and the color of the legs as well pretty well. They're a lot more modern than the original pulls that were on here. Now just to do that to all the rest of the drawers. The very last step that I'm gonna do is vacuum out and thoroughly clean the inside, the outside, the bottom of all of the drawers. I like to wait and do this as the very last step because if I were to clean them at the very beginning, they would still get dusty, the overspray dust would settle in there, and I'd have to clean them again. So this is when I go through and really make sure they're clean and prepared for people's homes. And there we have it. It's all staged up and this redesign is all done. Let me know what you think. I think this is a much more modern take on this really pretty solid wood dresser. It has a lot more life left to it and can be useful for decades and decades to come. Comment down below and let me know what you think. Thanks so much.